Good morning, YouTube. How's everyone going today? Just thought I'd come down the beach to make a video. Weekend here, weather's pretty good, got a southerly wind which has cooled it down. As I've stated on a lot of other videos, the weather up here and the weather pattern, the holding pattern that we've been in for quite a long time because the wet season's been humid as hell. Today, the topic area is looking at Asia, big pharma's cash cow. Please like, subscribe and share this if you feel like doing that. It could reach someone to help someone. And I do thank all the support that I've had from the last few videos, all the subscribes and shares, a few interesting comments that accompanied those, which is fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't have any problem with that, as long as you keep it, you know, sort of respectable. I can't see an issue in it. Today's story is based on a good friend of mine when I lived in Asia, and his story, and for the sake of privacy, I'm only going to use his nickname. But one thing I would like to say in regards to pharmaceutical use or misuse in Asia, it is a part of the culture, and there's a variety of reasons why. Obviously one of them is, and if you've lived in Asia you know that you don't need a prescription. It's unregulated. You can buy it over the counter. And there's a saying actually in Vietnam, when someone sneezes, they run straight to the drugstore, known as the pharmacy. That is very true. I should know that. My wife's Vietnamese, and we laugh about it sometimes because I'm not into taking pharmaceuticals. I have had pneumonia in the past. Of course, I took them then. You need them. When you really need them, they're fantastic, but the misuse is a problem. And in no way at all am I saying that the population of Asia is misusing. Of course, there's always a small population in every country that misuse pharmaceuticals, as well as the expats that live there. This story is about a friend of mine who unfortunately is no longer with us as a result of misuse. Now, most of the people I work with, I should say, hundreds and hundreds of people in the teaching industry in Vietnam. And the majority of those people did not use or did not misuse pharmaceuticals. There's always exceptions to the crowd, and this particular person was. And it's his story. Let's get into it. So, for the sake of privacy, I'm going to only use his nickname, which is Magoo. As this vlog will fold out, or unfold I should say, you'll pick up the reason why he got this nickname. So, Magoo had lived in Asia for about 20 years. He'd lived in South Korea, China. He'd also spent a lot of time in France. He spoke French quite well. He did university in the UK. He ended up in Vietnam. He worked at a school that I worked at, and over time we became friendly as a result of him moving pretty close to me in the outskirts of Saigon in Vietnam. So, although we weren't the best of friends, we would become quite close as the years rolled by. I guess because it's the close proximity to our houses at the time, we become good friends, and there's other reasons that I mentioned. So, cutting a long story short, this particular friend of mine, Magoo, he came across a bit of luck in a sense, but this luck would lead to his demise. He inherited a chunk of money. So in his late 30s, he was able to sort of, semi-retire, give up work, because the cost of living in Vietnam at the time, I'm talking about 10 years ago here too, guys, okay, not currently, although I do travel back to Vietnam to see family and friends via the wife. I do not live there anymore. So I get it, things change, okay? And again, I want to state this is not the majority, this is the minority. Okay, and I'll give reasons why people get hooked on pharmaceuticals. So he inherited a chunk of money, and this enabled him to be virtually just, do nothing. So because he had a taste for the drink, and I've mentioned this about alcohol in Vietnam and Southeast Asia, and the reasons why people get into it. There's cultural reasons behind that. This is not just people, I know there's a lot of people that lob up to Asia who are alcoholics. I don't know his 20 years ago or 30 years ago his actual background. I just know that he developed a dependency for alcohol when he lived in Vietnam for a variety of reasons. All those reasons I'm not going to get into, okay, but more or less what happened to him is what happened to a lot of people. If you work in the teaching industry, again, this is the teaching industry, but does apply for other industries in Southeast Asia, in particular Vietnam and Cambodia. There's a cultural aspect of that industry. In order to do business, to get contracts and to socialize, i.e. you go out and socialize. To get contracts, okay, in many industries in Asia, a part of that is a drinking culture. So how does that relate to him? Well, although he retired, he was running a bit of an online business back in the day, and I won't get into that business, but in order to make contacts, he used to go out and then obviously develop a drinking habit. So this drinking habit became a real big problem, and as a result, like a lot of other people going back to the teaching industry, he ended up with insomnia. So his sleeping patterns were disturbed, and I had the same problem. I've mentioned that in other videos. For a number of reasons, mostly due to his high intake of nicotine, caffeine, and alcohol. And someone someone commented that, oh yeah, all people hang around in bars, and they relate that to girly bars. I just want to state something now. Vietnam does not have the amount, and it is illegal, although they're there, of course they're there, but they don't have these red light districts like they do in Thailand and the Philippines. I just wanted to make a note on that because that was, not much gets to me. That was a bee in my bonnet from one of the comments. No, Vietnam is definitely nowhere near like the Philippines or Thailand. I just want to state that. Anyway, I digress. So when I talk about restaurants and bars, I'm talking about, because every bar in Vietnam and restaurant, let's say restaurant, they sell alcohol. It's as cheap as chips. So it's easy to have a few beers. And the definition of alcoholic varies, depends what research and what doctor you visit if you've got that problem. And like I said, I'm not a doctor, but if you've got that problem, you need to sort it out. You really do. Take ownership of it, acknowledge it, and get it sorted out. Because 2 to 4 beers a day mightn't seem a lot, but after a period of time, like that was my case. After a period of time, unlike my mate Magoo, okay, who'd drink a dozen, I drink like 4 to 6 or 3 to 6, like 4 to 5 days a week. I didn't drink every day. Okay, but over time, this wears you down and drives your anxiety levels up because of the issue that alcohol has. So let's go back to him. So he had a Vietnamese girlfriend, and he's like I said, in Vietnam, when someone sneezes, they all go to the pharmacy. So because he was having a problem with sleeping, which a lot of people do, a lot of teachers have this problem with sleeping, so they end up taking Valium. Okay. Which can, in some cases, not all, I've got to state that, some cases, lead to other issues. So he had that problem, he was taking Valium, and then as people, if you do the research, you know that after a period of time, if you take this stuff for a long time, you've got to increase the dosage. And this is what he did. As well as increasing the dosage, mixing it with alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine, he developed an anxiety disorder, as well as, depression, according to him. So, because his girlfriend at the time encouraged him to go to the doctor, this is about 2 years before his demise, before he passed away. What happened is he ended up getting hooked on SSRIs, okay? So benzos, as they call them, as they're affectionately known around the world. So, and if anyone knows and does the research, you do not mix benzos, okay? Benzodiazepines, that is, for the correct name, just call them benzos, with alcohol. And not only does it reduce the effect that it has on you to uptake on serotonin, okay, it has other side effects, and some of them are quite dangerous. And this is the reason he got the name Magoo, because he was always getting into bingles, and it got that way where he had to give up riding his motorbike around town because of the amount of accidents that he would get into. Now, Magoo was based on a cartoon character from America, where it's an old fella that bumps into everything. I'll leave it as that, do your own research. So he was affectionately known as, between his group of friends, as Magoo. So obviously he eventually had to get seance around everywhere. At the time, we didn't realize what his problem. He used to just state to us, I refuse to wear glasses because it makes me look old. He was in his late 30s. So because myself and others didn't have the background knowledge about the misuse of pharmaceuticals in this country, in Vietnam or in South Asia, we sort of fobbed it off and took that excuse as his issue for, you know, crashing his motorbike. But we knew there was more behind it, especially with the alcohol side of it. Anyway, so over the next 2 years, you could see his downward spiral. He was addicted to benzos, addicted to Valium, and of course the alcohol intake, drinking too much. And then when I decided to go back to Australia for my own issue, my own health issues, I remember visiting quite a lot at his house because he lived around the corner from me. And I noted to his girlfriend a few times, I said, you know, he's got to go and see a doctor. He's not looking well. He'd lost a lot of weight. He'd had bumps and bruises on him. I could see the amount of alcohol he was drinking. He was, you know, he was a full-on alcoholic, as well as the prescription drugs I could see on his table. So, cut a long story short, okay, he'd been on them, because I did get to talk to his girlfriend at the time. He'd been on them off and on for 2 years, battling addiction to them. He was using them at the advice, but misusing them as well, at the advice of a doctor, a local doctor in Saigon, in Ho Chi Minh City. And he'd be just be upping the dosage because of the effect of alcohol. And the problem is, when you get hooked onto SSRI drugs and you add alcohol, down the track you're going to come into real bad issues. And his issue was, he had a respiratory issue with the amount of SSRIs and alcohol, which led him into hospital. And unfortunately, he never came out of that hospital. He passed away in Saigon as a result of misuse of pharmaceuticals. Now, of course, I've cut a lot of this out, a lot of the information, a lot of the background story in respect to my friend. But this video and the information and the background story on this particular fella, I think is important to get out there, because there are other stories that I could tell, however I won't, of other particular expats who have gone down the same pathway. Do all expats do this? No, I want to state that no, they don't. But like anywhere in society, this happens. And because it's unregulated, that is the buying of pharmaceuticals in Vietnam, it's very easy to access, especially the sleeping pills, because sleeping pills or Valium leads into other misuse of pharmaceuticals if you let it, especially if you get misinformation from people that shouldn't be giving that, okay? So I'll finish it there. It is just a warning that when you're in Asia, be careful of advice that people give you, because with pharmaceuticals, they hand them out like candy. And especially when it comes to sleeping disorders, that most people will over time, if you're a long-term expat in these countries and you're working the afternoon and evening shifts and you're doing a lot of hours like I was. I never took that stuff. I self-medicated with alcohol, unlike pharmaceuticals, which I've never been into and never will. So look, I'll stop that one there, and I hope that maybe triggers, or you can pass it on to someone that may be living in Asia or anywhere around the world that is using or consuming SSRIs and including alcohol. It's a dangerous mix. It's something you really need to avoid so you don't end up like my mate, Magoo. Okay, until next time, hope you have a good day, get your head in a good place, and catch you on the next video. Peace out.